Why is astrocartography such a big deal? Why does it matter? If you follow me on Instagram or YouTube or my blog, you may know that I'm extremely passionate about astrocartography. And the reason why is because I've seen how this works. As I'm recording this, I have worked with over 2,000 clients. I have seen time and time again how literal astrocartography is, and how astrocartography is a reflection of your natal promise, of your natal blueprint of the world. Astrocartography is a mapping technique to see the stories of your life based on where you are in the world, and also the stories of other places in the world and how you can connect with those places, even right at home, right now, as you're listening to this podcast, whether you're driving or on your morning commute or cleaning or resting or going for a walk with your dog. As you're listening to this, think of all the places in the world that have called out to you. Think about the places in the world where important people in your life consistently come from. Certain cities, certain states, certain countries. Notice that there is this magical correlation between where you are now and the stories of different parts of the world and how they connect with your life right now. You have career lines and you have places in the world that are really great for your career or that help you learn and study something, or there are places that are amazing for spiritual healing and going on retreat or encountering a spiritual practice, philosophy, religion, or modality that influences your life in profound ways. And when you look at your map for the first time, your astrocartography map, your map shows you this. It shows you those stories. Your map is a reflection of what you came here in this life to do, and also the stories of other people, your career and reputation, and your home, your past, your family, your lineage, your roots, and your ancestry. Astrocartography is so important because not only does it give us so much information, but it also shows you energy. Have you ever been somewhere in the world and it just felt really different there energetically? Maybe there's certain places in the world that you consistently go back to and it just feels like home, or it's a place where you consistently learn a lot, or you experience a lot of growth in your life, or maybe there's a part of the world where every time you visit, there's some sort of frustrating delay, or things don't pan out like you hope it would, or things just don't flow like it does in other places. Energetically, you feel not aligned. You don't feel as connected to life, to love, to joy, to pleasure, to enjoyment. There's so many things to look at on your astrocartography map, and there's so many lines, including the relocated chart, that shows you these stories. Astrocartography is really important because it impacts your life. And there's this idea in astrology of, is astrology causal or signal? Is astrology showing that the cosmos, the planetary bodies, do they cause you to feel a certain way? Like because you go to a Pluto line, do you feel more psychologically intense? Or when you go to a Saturn line, do you feel more restricted and challenged? Is it because Saturn is causing that for you? Or is astrology more signal in that it's a reflection of what is already happening for you? It's just reflecting, it's just indicating, it's just showing that this is the story of this place. This is the story of this part of the world for you. And when you go to these places, this is the experience you'll have because these are the lines that are going through that area. And also the timing is also this. So if you go to Italy right now and you see that a certain transit or progression is going over that area, that progression, that transit is not causing you to feel a certain way in Italy, but rather it's showing you if you end up going to this area, this is what will be coming up. This is a reflection of what already is. And so there's two approaches to astrology. There's the causal approach and there's the signal. And this is all based on philosophy, your perspective, how you approach astrology. Philosophically, I believe that the cosmos are not causing us to feel a certain way, but it's just showing us that we are feeling this way. And I think of the cosmos as messengers, as guides that are giving us a language, that are giving us a code, that are giving us this tool to help us. I think of the cosmos as angels. I think of the cosmos as helping hands that just want us humans to know what's coming so that we can prepare for it, so that we can know when good things are coming and wonderful things are coming, to show us this is what's happening right now. I think of the cosmos, the planets, as giving us this little gift. They're like, hey, here's this little tool. Here's this little message. Here's this little message in a bottle. Here's this little coded language to help you understand what's going on in your life, in your family's life, your partner's life, your kids, their life, to see what's happening in the world so that you can better understand and make sense of things, and also to help guide you and aid you on your journey. And that's the same with astrocartography. Astrocartography was created by Jim Lewis. Jim Lewis was this incredible genius who created this mapping software. And what astrocartography is it shows us a reflection of what's happening in the world for us. And Jim Lewis created this mapping software out of relocation charts. If you don't know what a relocation chart is, it's basically your birth chart. But if you were born at a certain place in the world, but the difference between a relocated chart and a birth chart is that the relocated chart shows you if you were born in this new location in the world at the same time, at the same moment that you took your first breath. And this is why the birth time is so imperative. As an astrologer, it's really important to have the exact time of birth on your birth certificate. Because if you took your first breath in the world at that same moment, but you were born in a different part of the world, right, where there's a different time zone, it's a different part of the world, this is the birth chart or the chart for this new location. And what a relocation chart shows you is the story of a place. It shows you your friends and your community in that area of the world. It shows you your money story. It shows you your health. It shows you your career. It shows you your loved ones. It shows you your home and family life. It shows you your career story out there. It shows you what's your relationship to communication, to children, to creative expression, to spiritual healing, to meditation. Your relocated chart shows you all of these things. It's incredible. The relocated chart is such a powerful tool. And what Jim Lewis did, the founder of astrocartography, was he took all those relocated charts and he basically put them together on a map so that you could have one document. Instead of pulling up like a million relocated charts for all of these different places in the world, you could have one picture, one map that shows you any time a planet in that relocated chart was angular. In essence, what it does is it shows you your power places, where places in the world are important for you and for different reasons. Some places in the world are showing you where your people are, or where your lovers are, or your community, or your people, where relationships are really important in your life. Where are they from in the world? Where are those people born? It also shows you your career places. Where would be good places to be for your career growth, your reputation, your expansion of your work and your career? Where are places in the world that are good for home and belonging and a sense of comfort and connection with the land, with lineage, with ancestry, with roots, with family? Where is it best to retire and settle down? And it also shows you where in the world you can come home to yourself, where the focus of you and your story is really important. There are 4 angles in astrology: the ascendant, descendant, MC, IC, 4 points. And we have those 4 points in our birth chart as well as in our relocated charts. And so any time that a planet or a cosmic body, a planetary body, was situated or sitting on one of those 4 angles, that pulls up on the map. And so what Jim Lewis did was he was like, why make this so complicated for people? Why have all of these different charts? Let's have a map that shows us all of this. And then he added the parens, which are created from crossings of lines. So when you have two lines crossing in the world, it creates a paren, which is a latitude line. Then there was Michael Irvine, who created local space astrology, which shows you your neighborhoods, your towns, the buildings, the areas to go to when you travel to different places and in your local community. There's timing your travels using cyclocartography, which was also created by Jim Lewis. This tool of astrocartography is so magnetic, magical, powerful, because it shows us our relationship to the world. Jim Lewis was also a big fan of Carl Jung and psychology. And you can read about this in the book, The Psychology of Astrocartography. But Jim Lewis talks a lot about Carl Jung and how with astrocartography, it shows us the areas of the world that reflect our different levels of consciousness. And this is kind of taking on a more modern astrology approach as opposed to ancient traditional astrology. In modern astrology, psychology is really big, as opposed to ancient astrology, like Hellenistic astrology or traditional astrology, where it's largely used for prediction, to make sense of the world, to see what are the challenging times, the positive times, all of that. But psychology astrology is really big on exploring your psychology, your levels of consciousness, your layers of self. And what Jim Lewis talks about is this idea that when you travel to different parts of the world, different aspects of consciousness come up to the surface to be explored. And some places are challenging, and these are called shadowed planets, because it shows us the parts of self that are denied or repressed, or that we're afraid of confronting or seeing or owning in ourselves. And we can see this in our birth charts. So we have planets in our charts that are more difficultly placed. And we can see these shadowed planets in our charts, in our birth charts. We could see, using a variety of different techniques, to see what planets are more challenged in the chart. And so just like how we have that in the birth chart, we also have this in the world. When we go to planetary lines, those lines that crisscross across your astrocartography map, and they are more shadowed, maybe it's a place of exploring the depths of who you are, the darkness within you, or exploring more challenging facets of your consciousness, your psychology, which we all have. And I feel like in this modern age of manifestation being huge and why it's so important to feel good all the time, I feel like a lot of us forget that there is something important and valuable about confronting the hard times and owning that not every day will be perfect, and that not everything in your life needs to be perfect and magical and good all the time. And it is the hard times that make us stronger, that inspire growth and expansion within us, and that bring us to be more resilient human beings. And when we confront our shadow sides, our shadowed planets, our shadowed planetary lines, when we confront that, when we're exposed to that, we grow. I know for me in my own life, and I'm going to make a podcast on Pluto lines and why Pluto lines are not as bad as people think they are. I've been to my shadowed planetary lines. Pluto and my sun are very difficultly aspected in my chart, and I've been to those places, and I've had a lot of shadowed energy come up. And every single time I've worked with that energy, instead of denying it or repressing it or not confronting it and looking at it and going deep within it and allowing that shadow to come up, every time that I have allowed myself to go there, I have grown as a result. I have grown into a more authentic, strong, resilient, powerful, magnetic self. I've attracted more magic in my life by going to shadowed planetary lines. I've grown the most by going to these lines. And with that said, I don't want us to be afraid of going to hard places in the world. And that's something we're going to be exploring a lot in this podcast, on understanding our shadowed planetary lines and how we can see that in the birth chart. But also, what do you do when you go to hard places? What are the ways in which we can work with this energy instead of avoiding it or denying it or being afraid of the astrology? How can we use this to live a full life a life that is nuanced and varied and interesting. As growth-seeking humans, it's so important for us to be open to expansion and to growth and to learning and to knowledge. And going through hard times will bring us that knowledge. Exploring the harder topics will give us the insight, the wisdom that we never would have gathered if we didn't go through those hard times. And this isn't to romanticize shattered planets or to romanticize difficult transits or hard times, but it's just to show that sometimes you need to go there to learn something important in your life. And our soul understands that, but our ego doesn't. Our ego doesn't understand why something hard can be actually really important for the soul's evolvement. And our ego can only see things from this planetary Earth perspective, but when we get out of our ego and we connect with the soul, we come home to ourselves. And we'll be talking a lot about this on the podcast, about astrocartography lines and the difficult aspects within them and what we can learn from those places. But I share this because I have been to a lot of hard lines. I've had a lot of challenging experiences on lines. And a lot of these places I've been to, I didn't know about astrocartography when I went there. It's something you should know about me. I'm an incredibly optimistic person. Like, if I see something hard coming, I always approach it with, well, we'll get through it anyway. Like, that's just my default, how I approach life. If you know astrology, I do have Jupiter on my ascendant. Jupiter, the planet of growth, optimism, expansion, wisdom, a spiritual connection. I have it right on my ascendant. And the ascendant in your birth chart is really important because it's who you are. It's you. It's your attitude. It's your behaviors. It's your default way of seeing life. And I always approach life from this growth-seeking mindset. If I experience challenge, I find a way to learn from it. I find a way to grow from it. I'm always in that growth mindset energy. And even when I see challenging times on the horizon, I never let that stop me from doing something. I went to Iceland recently during an eclipse. The eclipse was on my sun. Not a great time to go to a sun line and a Pluto line, right? It's not a good time to do that when an eclipse is hitting you hard. So I decided to go to Iceland. And I went to Iceland and I was like, oh, this is going to be the most amazing trip. It's going to be so much fun. Everything's going to be amazing. And it ended up being a really hard place for me. A lot of wonderful things too, but it ended up being very difficult. A lot of shadow came up. A lot of breakthroughs I had that were really uncomfortable as a human to experience. But I left Iceland different. I came home a different person. I've never been the same since that trip. I am not afraid of astrocartography. I'm not afraid of transits because I refuse to allow that information to dictate my perspective, my light, my love for life and for living and for people. And when you're doing this work, when you're diving deep and understanding your relocated charts, as I'm going to teach you in this podcast, when you're diving deep in understanding your map of the world and you see a hard line, challenge yourself to not be afraid. Astrocartography is really important because not only does it show you the literal themes of an area in the world for you, as literal as seeing a Mars line, a Mars parent, a Mars latitude line, and Mars represents dogs. And you have an experience on that line where you're literally chased by wild dogs. Like, astrocartography can be that literal. It really can. Flooding, plumbing, Neptune lines. Mars, violence, aggression, dogs. Neptune, cameras, photography, medicine, anesthesia. Like, planets rule specific, very literal things. And when you go to those lines, you can experience themes around those topics. Like, for instance, Mercury Chiron latitudes. When I say latitude, I'm referring to a parent, which is a latitude crossing or a line that goes at a latitude, horizontal across your map. You can't see these using free softwares. You have to use a professional software to see this stuff. Mercury Chiron parent. Mercury, what is Mercury? Mercury is communication. Mercury is voice. What is Chiron? Healing, medicine, teaching. I have had so many clients that literally start businesses as speech pathologists and voice teachers and vocal teachers when they're living on Mercury, Chiron, parens, or latitudes. This is how literal astrocartography can be. You could literally see where would be best to grow farmland, where would be best to use agriculture and buy land and work with the land in some way. Where would be best to have a family? You can see where in the world would be best for these different specific topics. And on the flip side, you can also use astrocartography to see the big picture, zoomed out perspective of what is the overall energy of a place? How am I feeling? But also, what's the archetype of the lesson or theme of an area of the world? So it's not just literal and it's not just metaphorical, it's both. And that's astrology interpretation. There's two ways you can view astrology. I find both of them work. In fact, I've had so many clients that literally they go to astrocartography lines and specific literal events happen to them that are associated with those planetary archetypes. And I've also had a lot of clients where it's more of a lesson or an energy or how they feel or an overarching story of where their career got started, where they went to school, where their friends and their community, where they met them and grew those relationships, where they met their partner. What was the purpose of going to these places? It was for specific things. I'm so passionate about astrocartography because I've seen how this works. I've seen how this literally changes people's lives. I've made very insanely accurate predictions for people. I've told so many clients where to go. I've received so many emails and messages over the years about how going to those places changed their lives or how they found the love of their life. They found their partner. They started their business. They feel so much more at home in the world. I've had so many stories like this that I can't not talk about it. I can't not talk about it. Like, this is my life's mission, my life's work, my what I feel so deeply called to spread to everyone that wants to listen. Where you live matters. Your location matters. Where you go, it matters. Not only in terms of the map and your astrocartography map, but also timing. You might find that you go back to a place that you love and it feels different. Or you might go back to a specific area in the world and there's a different story that's unfolding for you in that new location. A new spark, a new story you're activating, a new part of your blueprint, your natal promise that's in your chart. When you go to these places, when you connect with these countries, when you bring that country into your home where you live, whether it's through watching vloggers and YouTube vloggers that are based in making videos about that part of the world, or listening to the music of that part of the world and letting that music inspire you to do something with your life, or connecting with friends and people that live in certain parts of the world, when you bring that home to you, you are expanding into new aspects of consciousness. The other thing about astrocartography that's so important and why it's such a big deal is that just like with connecting with your different aspects of consciousness, and that's so important, there's also this idea that as you travel and move to different parts of the world, you're seeing life through new filters. It's like you're putting on a pair of sunglasses, and each pair of sunglasses, they're so different. Those are the zodiac signs, the 12 zodiac signs in astrology. It's like you have 12 pairs of sunglasses, and every time you put on a new pair and there's a new filter, a new color, a new style, maybe one pair is more heavy, or one pair is more thin, or one pair has like bright neon shades of pink, or another pair of sunglasses is more somber and moody. You also see through a new filter in a new part of the world. This is relocated charts. This is the ascendant. This is your first house of the relocated chart. A new zodiac sign is filtering that perception, that perspective, your ascendant. How you see the world changes. How you see life, it changes. As I'm recording this, I have a Pisces ascendant. I am seeing life through a Pisces lens. Natally in my chart, I'm a Scorpio rising. I see life through a Scorpio lens. And this doesn't mean that you yourself change. You'll always be your natal chart. You'll always be your birth chart. That's always a part of who you are. It's your I call it your foundation. It's the cement beneath your feet. It is the grounded foundation of who you are and what you came here to do with your life. But as you travel, as you live in different parts of the world, as you connect with different parts of the world, you start seeing life and connecting through different zodiac signs, different energies, different archetypes of those signs. Seeing life through an Aries lens is going to be very different from seeing life through a Cancer lens. Seeing life through a Scorpio lens is going to be so different from seeing life through a Taurus lens or an Aquarius lens. These are your sunglasses. This is your rising sign. This is your ascendant. This is the first relocated house in the relocated chart. And we'll talk more about this on the podcast, but I teach a lot about this in my courses, my astrocartography courses. That first house is so important because it's showing you, how are you taking in life? How are you seeing the world differently? And it's probably one of my favorite parts of relocation astrology is connecting with those different sunglasses, connecting with those different lenses and seeing life through new filters. I love that about travel. I love that about relocation. It's, I think, the coolest thing about astrocartography. And I've lived this, I've experienced this. I've lived in so many parts of the world. I've traveled to so many places in the world. I've been traveling consistently for 7 years, but I started traveling cross country, taking Amtrak trains when I was 19 years old. I was living in New York City, and I would take $1 megabus rides through Pennsylvania and West Virginia and New Jersey. And I remember bringing a little map with me and a little booklet that I got at a gas station that had like all the routes and the roads through all these states. And I would just, when I wasn't working, I had a day off, I would get on a megabus and I would take my little map book. I would scrawl on the map my route and like where I was going and how I was feeling. And I've been an active journaler since I was a little kid. And so as I was taking bus rides or taking trains across the country from New York to California, taking the California Zephyr from Chicago to Sacramento, I remember writing in my journal how I felt in different places and what my experiences were in different places. And I would take that little map and I would just keep scribbling my route and documenting. And I've been living this astrocartography really for so long. And I now understand why. I understand why I felt certain ways or why certain things happened to me in certain places or what the stories of certain places in my life were about because of astrocartography. And it just gives you that clarity. It gives you that grounded understanding of place and why place matters and your stories of the world, your connections with the world, your connections with culture, your connections with people. This is, I think, the most innovative, ahead of the time thing ever. And maybe I'm biased because I love travel and I love astrology. But we're just in the beginning. Astrocartography is in its infancy. This is the beginning of it. And I'm on a mission to teach grounded information, grounded guidance, ground the woo. It's not just about going to a Venus line. And if you open up an app like TikTok or Instagram, you're just going to be flooded with things like don't go to your Pluto line or don't go to your Saturn line, when that information is pop astrology and it's not grounded in the chart. A lot of astrologers who talk about astrocartography, they're influencers, they're lifestyle bloggers. They don't know anything about astrology. And if they do, they just know the basics. Like, what does Venus mean? What does the sun mean? But they're not going into the chart. They're not looking at the chart. They're not looking at how that person's sun is aspected or what parents are in that area or what the timing for going to that area is. They're just saying go to a Venus line. And I know this because that's what I learned when I first learned astrocartography in 2018. When I moved to France in 2018, I took an astrocartography class by a woman who is a lifestyle influencer, spiritual influencer on Instagram. She's a huge following. She's very well known. And it was the most disappointing class because she did not give any information on relocated charts or parents or local space or anything of that. And I remember going on a live call with her and being just so disheartened that the fact that she didn't really know what she was talking about. And ever since then, I have wanted to understand why not all Venus lines are good for everyone. Why is it that not all people's Jupiter lines are good for them? Why is that? Why is the results not measuring up to the general information that you find online? And how can I bring truth to people? How can I expose the falsehoods of the astrology and spiritual new age world and bring grounded truth and guidance and connect you back home to yourself and your truth? I am a Scorpio rising with Pluto, Jupiter, and the North Node in Scorpio in my first house. And as I get older, I just lean into this more and more. Like, this is what I came here to do. I came to talk about truth. I came to talk about these things that I'm so passionate about. And astrocartography is something that will become more important as the years go on. I see this advancing and growing and being the next huge thing. Astrocartography still feels very niche right now, but I don't think it will be for long. And I've sensed this for several years now, and I feel like we are about to hit a point where it's going to become more mainstream. I'm already seeing Moxie hotels start using astrocartography to help people plan their hotel travels and plan their trips on where they should go. Astrocartography is the future, and I'm so certain of the growth and also the expansion and the clarity and the guidance that people will be using their life and their time and their money intentionally. It's not just about traveling anywhere and hoping it's a good trip. It's not just about buying a house anywhere and hoping it's going to be a good house, good place to live. I can't tell you the amount of clients I've had who've gotten houses, who have mortgages and hate where they live, and they always have, but they bought the house anyway. And they come to me and say, damn, I wish I knew this sooner. I wish I knew astrocartography sooner before I spent all this money on this mortgage. Or I wish I came to you sooner before going to that area where I have a really hard line. Let's travel with intention. Let's live intentionally and intuitively, because I'm a big believer in both and that you can do both, and live a balanced life of intuition and intention. And that's what astrocartography does. And not only does it show us what we can do to plan for our future, because you can use it to plan your future, but also remember that big picture perspective, that astrocartography shows you more than just what to do, where to be, when to go. Although it does show you that, it also shows you your stories and the unlocking of potential within your birth chart, within your life story, within your natal promise. You are literally unlocking your promise in the world. That's what astrocartography does. And this is a tool that we should all have in our back pocket. And I'm so excited for you to be here, for you to be listening. Thank you for tuning in today, for taking time in your day to tune in to this valuable information and knowledge. And I hope it's inspired you to pull up your map and to start to see your life through that lens of consciousness and sunglasses and your natal purpose and potential and what you came here to do and how you can connect with these different parts of the world. If you haven't already, please do me a huge favor and leave a 5-star review of this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Send me a screenshot and you will be entered in a drawing to win a free astrocartography reading. I'm gifting several astrocartography readings to those of you who help me out with this. And also all of you will be getting a live 1-hour training, a class training on how to understand your astrocartography map. So be sure to send me that screenshot via email or on Instagram at Ms. Helena Woods, or on my email at helena@helenawoods.com, and you'll be entered to win those free readings. So thank you so much for helping me out. I'm so excited to get this message out into the world, to bring astrocartography mainstream so that more people know about this valuable information, to help their lives, to bring them home to their places in the world. And I will see you tomorrow in the next episode. Have a magical day, kindred spirit, and happy astro